If you've ever wondered why your spouse or your best friend or your child just won't stop researching post-Mormon material, this video is for you. Because it's not really about the post-Mormon material anymore. Of course, they already know all this stuff. They've stopped going to church a while ago. They're not wearing garments. They're never going back. But they still have attachment wounds that are waiting to be healed. I have another video talking about attachment wounds and attachment styles, but this video is about healing those wounds. And this is where you need to be if you are already in that cycle. You know something else is happening. You know that there's some other reason other than the logicking of post-Mormonism or faith deconstruction that is happening for you or your loved one, where you just cannot seem to break away from the post-Mormon space and you don't know why. Let's get into it. Attachment repair. I'm going to speak in the second person as if I'm speaking to you, but this might apply to someone else in your life, and I will allow you to take that privilege of adapting it accordingly. As you grow up, your parents or caregivers are teaching you something fundamental about the world in the way that they show up for your emotional needs, your ideas, your creativity, your concerns, your distress. And that fundamental thing that they are teaching you about the world is called attachment. And from interacting with your parents or caregivers, you may learn very secure attachment because they might be responsive and encouraging and stable as relationship counterparts. And if you did have that attachment style, then congratulations and thank you for being here for the rest of us. If you didn't have that style of parent or caregiving given to you as a child, then you probably developed some kind of wounded attachment style. Either an anxious attachment style in which you were worried about your parent coming into your space too much. You may have had kind of emotional whiplash of not really knowing what was going to happen next. Or you could have had avoidant attachment style in which you just simply withdrew and kept things to yourself because you didn't feel like your needs or your ideas would be recognized or validated. And so you just learned to kind of keep it all bottled up inside. Or you may have had disorganized attachment style from getting a combination of very fearful or fear-inducing reactions from your parents and then inconsistently getting good responses from them sometimes, or sometimes being just abandoned completely. These are all different styles of attachment. They merge, they overlap with each other, and you can find lots of videos on YouTube about them. But this video is specifically to help you heal from these attachment wounds. But first, you need to be enough aware of your own body, your own psycho-spiritual, emotional body, that you can recognize when something is triggering you. And this is pretty simple to detect, even though most of us are not taught how to do this. But here's how you would do it. I actually just had this happen yesterday, so I'll describe this. Yesterday, as I was reading the news, I got triggered. It didn't happen all at once, but at some point I noticed that my body was kind of tightening, that I was holding very still. And I noticed that especially in my hips, there was this compression feeling. There was this feeling of tension. And it wasn't even just static tension. It was it was like an antelope tension. It was the tension that is getting ready to run away. And so from these little cues, this stillness, this rigidness that happened in my shoulders, and from this tension in my hips, I realized that I was in a freeze response from reading the news, and that my body was reacting in a way to try and keep me safe. And recognizing that did not make the reaction go away, but it did allow me to slip into a state of nurturance for the rest of the day towards my body. So I took things really slowly. I didn't make decisions quickly. If I felt like I wanted to meander into this other topic of curiosity, I allowed myself to do that. I also allowed myself to make a treat or a special thing that night just because I wanted to, just because that sounded like it would feel comforting. And these were all things that I did in the spirit of nurturing my body out of that freeze response. And by the evening, I was able to feel my shoulders kind of let go of that tension, to feel like I didn't need to be on the edge of running away from something, to feel like I had released that freeze response and was able to come back into a more normal level of functioning. But back to how you heal from these things. when you are coming out of a faith deconstruction, you're going to have moments that trigger you. The triggers that you encounter are going to cause reactions in your body that are not consciously chosen by you, but do require your conscious attendance. Because when you slip into that trigger state, if you don't recognize that you are in a trigger state and you try to just keep living your normal life as like you always do, and require yourself to show up in the ways that you always expect yourself to show up, you will be working over the top of this massive trigger that will get bigger and bigger because it's not being attended to. You have to kind of treat yourself like the parent in this situation and your body as like your own child. And so pretend that like when your body enters that triggered state, there is a reason for it. There is a logic to it. So it's not non-logical in that way. It is sensical. But you have to consciously step in to recognize and hold your body in that triggered state in order to help yourself regulate. Now, I realize that all of this sounds very circular because you're helping yourself and you're noticing yourself and it's all like, it feels like navel-gazing maybe. And this is where like having a partner or another secure attachment figure would be really useful. However, when we're leaving a religion, a lot of the times that we encounter triggers are just on our own. And even our spouse might not be on the same page that we are. Or your spouse might be more triggered than you are. And so it's really useful to have these tools to regulate yourself as you navigate the post-religious space, because you're used to having an entire community, an entire network, an entire like existential paradigm that will regulate you. However, once you have removed yourself from that kind of environment, you need to be able to regulate yourself until you can get back into communication with trustworthy and secure individuals who will help you adapt to the world in a non-religious way. The next thing you do is to pay attention to what your body is asking from you. Because if your body is going through a freeze response, it might be asking you to close up, to hide, to cancel all your meetings, to not show up for things, to go and like stick your head under the covers, to crawl underneath something, to go stand in a corner. It doesn't have to be something that is generally acceptable as an adult behavior. The responses that your body is having are biological responses. They are based on our mammalian bodies and our awareness that we need other people. They are not based on your ideas of what looks cool or professional. So once you have come into awareness and you have identified what your body is asking for, to run away, to hide, to act out, to punch something, whatever it is, you can then begin to ask your body questions. Like again, pretend you're the parent in this relationship with the child. Begin asking your body questions about what would feel good. Like, maybe you can't go just stand in a corner at your office, but you can sit with your arms crossed and close your eyes for 5 minutes. Maybe you can put your headphones on and just zen out to music and just jam with it for 5 minutes. You can ask your body these questions and see what would feel good. If it's running away, maybe you can't run away from whatever environment you're in, but you can take a break to go work out, or you can go on a 5-minute walk. Like 5 minutes is really like a significant amount of time when it comes to responding to these triggers. Every little thing that you do to show that you are responsive to what your body is feeling is going to communicate to your body that it is in a safe space and that it can regulate after this trigger. So 5 minutes. Just go for a walk for 5 minutes. Just do push-ups in your cubicle for 5 minutes. Just take a break from work and like go shout or scream into a pillow, or not into a pillow. Scream into your iPhone. Go scream at a tree. The tree can take it. Whatever it is you choose to do though, like give it a boundary. Give it a boundary of 5 minutes, of one meal, of 1 hour, and allow yourself to sink into the expression of that trigger and to meeting that need while you are in that time box. And your conscious mind can make decisions about this time box. It can make decisions about where you choose to express and with whom. It can make decisions about whether it is appropriate to have this interaction in front of your boss or in front of your spouse or in front of your children or none of the above. And it can make decisions that will best tend to your long-term needs. But the important thing is that your conscious mind find a way to meet the need of your mammalian body that is experiencing an attachment trigger in that moment. Next thing you can do, if you're a journaler, it's great to do journaling. If you don't love journaling, you can flip open the voice memos app on your phone and just record yourself talking. Just start to talk through the trigger. Say, wow, this thing really bothered me. Or I'm thinking about this today and I am so annoyed about it. Or I was listening to this song and it brought up this thing that church leaders used to say to me and I'm so pissed about it right now. Whatever it is, you can find a way to bring some expression to it. Because when you are able to talk or write about the thing that is bothering you, you open up a way for your body to not just hold all of that inside itself and to be responsible for the huge weight of that, but to open up this conduit in letting out that energy into something. And it doesn't have to be something you publish. It could be a private journal. It could be a private voice memo. You could delete it afterwards. There just has to be some element of self-expression. And if neither of those options are good for you, then get creative about how your body, yourself, feels like expressing this feeling. And in mammalian terms, this is really important because every mammal, when it experiences a threat to its survival or its safety, it has an immediate reaction to try and remove it from danger, like running away, or freezing, or playing dead, or hiding. There's that immediate reaction. But then there's this secondary reaction. There's a second wave of reaction that happens after that first wave, in which the animal has to do something to discharge the energy. And often it's shaking. It's shaking it out. It's shaking it off. You've seen dogs do this. You see cats do this. You've probably seen other animals do this if you are around any type of animal. But animals have natural ways of discharging this energy just instinctually through moving their bodies or through using their voices. For us as humans, a lot of us have to be re-taught how to do this because we were trained out of meeting our mammalian needs as we grew up. And so we feel awkward or embarrassed or unprofessional about it now that we're adults. But this is still the best way to help yourself heal your attachment wounds, is to respond to them in this way and let yourself take that second reaction to whatever the danger was instead of just holding the trigger there in your body. The next best thing you can do to heal these triggers is to find a way to be socially integrated, whether that is talking to your spouse or your partner or even your kids about what has happened to you or this trigger that you were experiencing and what it felt like. Or it can just mean going to a concert or another public space and just being around other people. But just being around other people in a neutral space can do wonders for healing that attachment wound, because it reminds your body that there are other people who are okay with you, who are not threatening to you, who are just around you, and that you can be integrated in that space. Now, a key for that one is to not bring your post-Mormon podcasts in your ears to the cafe or wherever you are going to be hanging out. You've got to be able to really notice and be in that space. So don't try to remove yourself or be a split presence in that space. You want to fully integrate with that neutral social space so that you can remind your body that you have belonging, that there are ways to be safe and around other people in the world. Then the last recommendation that I have for you today is to find something pleasurable, something delightful, something awe-inspiring, because the impulse to feel awe or to feel, to recognize beauty or to just feel delight automatically soothes and regulates our nervous system. And so if you are able to recognize your trigger, address that immediate need, go through the second wave of releasing or grounding that trigger through being in a social environment or through shaking it off or whatever it is, and then take yourself into a place of pleasure or delight, then you've created this new pathway for your brain and your body to go through towards regulation. You have reparented, you have taught yourself a new way towards balance and integration with your life that does not depend on an inconsistent, unreliable, neglectful, or even frightening caregiver. Your body learned that response from a caregiver or parent, or possibly your entire community in the church. It learned that response at some point, and it's going to keep using that response because it thinks that that response will keep you safe. It will keep sending you into that trigger in order to keep you safe. In order to leave that trigger and heal that attachment wound, you have to be able to recognize that it's there and then gently move yourself out of it to a place where you can experience joy and pleasure again, which are naturally regulating. Now, to bring it all together, what does this have to do with your spouse who just won't stop listening to Mormon stories, even though it's been 11 years and you're very clearly out of the church and they don't believe it anymore, but they just keep listening to the same story arc over and over again, almost as if it's an addiction or a fixation. First of all, it could actually be an addiction or a fixation, and especially with undiagnosed neurodivergences all over the place, you might investigate, if you have ADHD or autism or are on the spectrum of one of those things, or OCD, and that could be playing a part in why it feels like you just have to understand every single part of this in order to move on from it. And the advice that you would give to someone who is neurodivergent might be slightly more niche than what I'm saying. However, a lot of the reason that we will exhibit fixation behaviors in a topic like this is because we're kind of going back to lick the wound, just back to that mammalian body response. If we feel that attachment disruption from our friends, community, loved ones, from our existential figures, from our deity, we're going to feel that as a wound. And coming back to the same post-Mormon material over and over again is kind of like us emotionally and spiritually coming back to tend to that wound. But the problem is, if you just keep licking a wound forever, it's just going to stay open, right? You've got to be able to recognize that you're in a trigger response, that you do have emotional wounding, that you do have an attachment style whose needs are not being met. And then you have to craft a new pathway in order to take yourself from that trigger, from that feeling of something's not right. I'm going to go listen to a post-Mormon podcast. Or something's not right. I need to angrily post about this online. Assuming that you have gone through the arc of the deconstruction already, you're probably at a point several years following leaving the church where those responses are no longer helping you. You're coming back to lick a wound and it's actually keeping the wound open. Now, if you want to become a post-Mormon commentator, more power to you, because it's a big job and the more voices, the better. But if that's not something that's really calling to you, then you've got to just start constructing this pathway back to regulation. And again, that's all about noticing your body and tending to your mammalian needs as someone who needs attachments and who needs attachment figures and has not been taught a secure attachment style to begin with. Once you have tended to your own needs enough that you're starting to feel more secure on your own again, then you can start reaching out to more diverse people to investigate other opportunities for creating other attachment figures in your life. But one of the things you need to be careful of, especially if you're just fresh off the deconstruction, or you still feel like you're bleeding out, which was my feeling. 3 years into my deconstruction, I still felt like I was hemorrhaging emotional and spiritual power because I felt so lonely. I felt so abandoned by my family specifically. I felt so rejected and neglected, and that was really activating all of my wounds, and I didn't know how to fix it. I didn't have the language of attachment theory, and I couldn't recognize how to re-regulate myself. And so I just kind of was spinning my wheels in the post-Mormon space, not knowing what to do, but not feeling any better if I stopped doing the things I was doing. So I just kept using that coping mechanism of listening to my post-Mormon podcasts and stuff, which are all great, by the way. I don't want any of them to go away. I think they're so valuable and so helpful, and all of them helped me so much during my deconstruction. situation, like fully support all of the post-Mormon content creators. But you know if you're using it in an unhealthy way. You know if you're using it in an addictive way or a fixation type way. And as you are tending to your attachment wounds, it might be necessary to close those up for a little while, to unsubscribe for a little while. It's not to say forever. Maybe you'll come back to it. But at least for a while, you need to like give yourself some distance from the wounding. You need to let it heal. And that means letting yourself come back to regulation through noticing and tending to your own mammalian needs, rather than going back to re-wound yourself with outrage and with reminders of neglect from your Mormon experience. Yes, so attachment theory is a big deal, especially if you've gone through a religious transition. I hope this video helped in some way, but remember that this is not comprehensive and that I'm not your psychologist. So like do consult with your therapist about like how this might be affecting your life. And do read a lot. There's tons of free material online, other YouTube videos, other websites, and it's worth your time to learn how this is affecting you in your life following your deconstruction. And whether or not you specifically figure out what category you fit into, it's going to help you regardless to give yourself some names and some processes by which to help yourself regulate. As with all of my videos, my wish for you is deep integration of all of the things that you learned and did as a Mormon into this new life as a new person, or rather as the same person you always were, just with new opportunities and new ways of expressing yourself. I hope that you create something totally beautiful. Wishing you the best, and take care until next time.